Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Gilsdorf, the Executive Vice President for the National Association of Federal Veterinarians, and I'd like to talk to you today about things that I think federal veterinarians should know. There are about 3,200 veterinarians working for the federal government in about 20 different agencies. There are different types of positions within the federal government that veterinarians are employed in. One is the civil service system, where you're working for under a GS schedule. Another one is the Commissioned Corps with the U.S. Public Health Service. That's a uniformed service opportunity like the military service, which is another one. In both of those cases, you're going to be working as a uniform member of the service. There are also part-time activities within the government, such as fellowships, and you can also be a contractor. Under those systems, you can work under different pay systems. Most people work under the general schedule, which is under the authority of Title V, and you have a system where you're hired generally as an 11, GS 11, and then you have the opportunity to progress every year for 3 years in steps, and then every 2 years thereafter. If you're working within Veterans Affairs, there are about 19 veterinarians there. In lab animal medicine, they work under Title 38. If you're working in the armed forces, you would work under Title 10. And then there are a special authority, pay authority, within the Health and Human Services area, especially within NIH and CDC. And there you'll be working under Title 42. The types of activities that each one of these veterinarians perform is quite varied. I'll try to highlight a few things for each different veterinary activity. Veterinarians within the Centers of Disease Control, CDC, are in a number of different positions. Some are working in state health departments, some are working in emergency infectious diseases or in environmental health, depending on the section that they're in. And as far as their responsibilities, some are center directors, fellows, or laboratory animal care veterinarians. Some of their activities within CDC are policy development, disease, injury, and prevention, control and elimination of diseases, outbreak investigations, environmental risk assessments, epidemiologic services and studies, biochemical terrorism, emergency preparedness, infectious control, infection control, program evaluation, laboratory science, training, and lab animal medicine. There are veterinarians at the National Institutes of Health, NIH. Some are working in the Office of the Director, some work with cancer, allergy, infectious diseases, environmental health science, heart and lung areas, in all different areas. And primarily they conduct research or they perform laboratory animal care and use activities. There are also epidemiologists and program directors, toxicologists, and veterinary comparative pathologists within NIH. You can talk about career ladders. Within the different agencies, you have different career ladder opportunities. Within the United States Department of Agriculture, especially within the APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, you have an opportunity to come on as an 11 and go to a 12. And then from there are promotion potentials, depending on which agency within USDA you are in, to go up the ladder to a 15. The higher you go, the fewer positions there are. If you're working within Health and Human Services, you can again come in as an 11 or a 12 and have the opportunity going up to a 15 as well. And in both cases, there are some senior executive service opportunities. Generally, you will not stay in the veterinary medical series after a GS 12 or 13. You may, but there are more opportunities in other series above the GS 14 level. So these are things you might want to explore and learn more about because it helps you plan your career for the rest of your time with the federal government. If you're looking at moving up your career ladder, you want to make sure that you're performing at a fully successful level. One thing to keep in mind is agency funding levels. If agencies have more funding, they have more likely will have more positions available. and you're more likely to be promoted. Another thing to keep in mind is your position description. You should get a copy of that when you start with federal government, and every time you change positions, you'll have a new position description. But you want to be aware of what your position description says and what you're responsible for, what skills, knowledge, and abilities that you're required to have in that position. Your position description is a description of your duties and responsibilities. It's used to determine your grade level and your pay. You get points for each type of activity that you're responsible for, and that's dependent on your classification. In order to change your position description, it have to be classified at a different level by a classification specialist. As far as for performance appraisals, at the end of each year you usually have a performance appraisal. Also, you need to be in a position, whether it's your current position or a new position, for at least 90 days before you can receive a performance appraisal. A lot of times they will ask you for a performance appraisal when you're applying for a promotion. So you need to have that available. There's usually a 5-level system for performance appraisals. You can be outstanding, highly successful, fully successful, minimally successful, or unsuccessful, or unacceptable. You and your immediate supervisor are responsible for establishing your performance plan within 30 days of your appointment, and you must write out how to meet your performance appraisal requirements. It's not your supervisor's responsibility to write up your performance appraisal. It's yours. Many people don't agree with that, but no one knows better how you perform than yourself. It's better if you write it, and then the supervisor needs to agree with it and sign off on it. Another thing to be aware of is the tour of duty. Employees need to know what their tour of duty is and what it consists of. If you're assigned to a standard tour or a flexible tour, it depends on what agency you're with and what type of position you're in, the type of tour that you might be on. You need to know if you're considered an essential employee, because during emergency operations, essential employees are required to come to work, regardless of the situation. Pay deductions are another thing to be aware of. You can take deductions out of your pay for certain types of things. For your federal and state taxes, for example, retirement contributions, Social Security, all those things normally are taken out, but also for life insurance, health insurance, association dues. Deductions are also authorized for thrift savings plans, savings bonds, financial institutions, charitable contributions, loan payments, those sorts of things. That you can arrange all of that with your Human Resources office. You would be paid bi-weekly within the government. Once you retire, then it goes to a monthly retirement check. Okay, one thing to keep in mind is carefully review your pay statements. You'll get them every 2 weeks. Make sure that they're correct. Make sure that all the codes are correct. And you need to double check those when you start. There are miscellaneous sources of pay. You can qualify for an award depending on your performance, and there are different types of award systems, and you need to check that out within your agency. Bonuses are also available. Generally, the most common one is a recruitment bonus when you start, and if you're lucky enough to get a recruitment bonus, then that's good. There are relocation bonuses as well. Up to 25% may be paid for current federal employees. It depends on what position you're applying for, whether that's valid or not. As far as benefits within the government, that should be explained to you when you first start, but there are health benefits and health insurance, life insurance, of course retirement, and someone needs to explain the retirement system to you. You've got survivor benefits upon death of the employee, so make sure your spouse receives some benefit if you die. There are thrift savings plans. Those are good things to invest in. There are 5 different investment choices you can choose from. And there are in-service loans and withdrawals available as well. If something happens to you in your employment that you're not happy with, there are appeal rights that you can utilize. You need to be aware of what those appeal rights are. Career employees may appeal any of the disciplinary actions that are taken against them or personnel decisions if they believe they are adverse to them. It's done through the Merit Systems Protection Board. As a government employee, you need to make sure that you follow the ethics rules properly. There are some employee restrictions that you need to follow when you're in the federal government. One is ethical conduct, and there are certain things you can and can't do as a federal employee. For example, you cannot use public office for your own private gain. As far as accepting gifts, that's very restricted, usually under $25. As far as working outside the government part-time, you are allowed to do that, but you have to be approved to do that. There's a whole list of employee restrictions that you need to be aware of, and we can provide those to you as a handout. Federal veterinarians comprise about 0.5% of all the individuals working in public health. There are shortages of veterinarians within state, federal, and international communities. Veterinarians in public health surpass the number listed as public health veterinarians. That means that there are veterinarians working in public health positions that are not truly veterinary positions. So they could be microbiologists and other activities similar to that. There are basic veterinary competencies that are common to most federal positions, and they include epidemiology, disease surveillance, threat and risk assessments, disease response, and animal care. APHIS also requires veterinarians to have clinical experience and knowledge of foreign animal diseases. Within the Army and the Air Force, in addition to the basic competencies, there are public health, medical intelligence, decontamination, food safety, toxicology, and pathology that are required. In the Agricultural Research Service, in addition to the basic competencies, they also would like knowledge in research, pathogen detection, and immunology. With the Environmental Protection Agency, veterinarians are also expected to know about environmental contamination, research, and adverse health effects. With the Fish and Wildlife Service, additional knowledge in protecting wildlife health, forensics, and health assessments is required. Within the Food and Drug Administration, veterinarians are also expected to know the animal drug review and approval process, animal drug resistance, laboratory animal medicine requirements, and pathology. Within the Food Safety Inspection Service, there are food safety supervision and assessment requirements that are necessary to be aware of, residues, humane handling, and microbiological sampling and testing. Within the Center of Disease Control, there are outbreak investigations and environmental risk assessments, laboratory animal medicine, animal care, and emergency animal health preparedness that is needed. And then within the National Institutes of Health and the Veterans Administration, veterinarians are expected to know more about research, laboratory animal medicine, toxicology, and pathology.